WADR.
WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Accra, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online on WADR.org. Welcome to NEWSLINK. Here are the top stories. A vote counting continues in Liberia after presidential runoff election amid reported tension in some parts of the country.
Some party agents were demanding the polling staff to read out the names of voters prior to voting. Commission clarified that this is against the polling and counting procedures, and it had the propensity to expose voters to undue scrutiny by unauthorized persons.
Debate escalates in Senegal over possible postponement of February 2024 presidential election. The Burkinabe government celebrates Mali's defeat of rebel groups in Kidal after intense fighting, and Ghana Union of Traders calls for removal of COVID-19 levy and raw material taxes ahead of the 2024 budget presentation.
We think that government should make sure that the COVID-19 levy should be abolished from the books, from the port, and then also the 2% special levy should also be abolished.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with NEWSLINK.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana and Liberia, where we begin this edition of our news broadcast because counting of votes by the National Elections Commission (NEC) continues after Tuesday's presidential runoff between incumbent George Weah and opposition leader Joseph Boakai. Political, local and international election observers, including Nigeria's former president Goodluck Jonathan, have all commended Liberians for the peaceful conduct of the electoral process on November 14. From Monrovia, WADR's Darlington Popper reports that there was, however, tension in some parts of the country as voting came to an end Tuesday evening.
On Tuesday night, supporters of both political parties took to the streets in parts of the capital, Monrovia, claiming victory for their respective candidates ahead of the release of provisional results by the Elections Commission on Wednesday. The runoff election is crucial in determining whether President George Weah will secure a second 6-year term or if 78-year-old Joseph Boakai will be elected. Tension arose at some polling centers before the end of voting on Tuesday when opposition party agents demanded that temporary electoral workers announce the names of voters loudly for verification. Amos Tuwe, the Secretary General of the Unity Party, provided justification for this demand.
As a matter of fact, Section 5.4 and 5.6 of the elections laws state clearly that when a voter enters a polling room, that voter should clearly state their name to the voter identification officer of NEC. So on the basis of that, we had a meeting about 3 days ago with the Elections Commission. That particular meeting at the Elections Commission, we summarized as follows. That one, when a voter enters the polling room, that voter will have an opportunity to state their name clearly to the VRO, and that was agreed upon by even the CDC and the Elections Commission.
However, the chairperson of the commission, David Etta Branlasana, stated that such demands are contrary to the electoral laws. She advised hostiles not to adhere to these demands, leading to tension at some polling centers.
Some party agents were demanding the polling staff to read out the names of voters prior to voting so that the voter is identified in the final registration roll (FRR) in possession of political party agents. Commission clarified that this is against the polling and counting procedures, and it had the propensity to expose voters to undue scrutiny by unauthorized persons, thereby jeopardizing the protection of voters. Such action also compromises the secrecy of the voting process.
The Commission announced that it will commence the release of provisional results on Wednesday. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Porkpa in Monrovia.
As a reminder, the Elections Commission Press Center opens at 4 p.m. for updates on the collection of results, and WADR will bring you details on that. More on electoral matters. Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has rejected claims of tampering with the outcome of the Kogi State Governorship off-cycle election on the results view portal. This reaction followed allegations that the commission manipulated the results. However, INEC's National Commissioner and member of the Information and Voter Education Committee, Mohammed Kudu Haruna, dismissed the claims as unfounded. WADR's Usman Umar in Abuja reports.
To clarify the allegations, INEC underscores that the most precise and up-to-date voter accreditation data is available through the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System, BVAS, which is employed to authenticate and accredit registered voters on election day. The BVAS automatically preserves the accreditation data of all voters. It says the BVAS is designed to primarily operate offline, ensuring a quicker and more seamless authentication and accreditation process for voters. However, when operational, it transfers accreditation data to the accreditation back-end system based on internet connectivity strength. This transfer does not occur when the service's application is inactive or when internet connectivity is weak. Similar situations, it says, may arise when more than one BVAS device is used at a polling unit with over 1,200 unregistered voters. INEC likens this circumstance to a delay in delivering an SMS caused by poor network service, highlighting the technical factors that may affect data upload to the IREF portal. The Commission seeks to allay concerns about the integrity of the electoral process and assures the public of the accuracy of the BVAS as the primary source of voter accreditation data. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
And here in Senegal, discussions about a potential postponement of the February 2024 presidential election are intensifying. Both the ruling and opposition figures are deliberating on the idea of altering the electoral calendar. Despite this, Khalifa Sall's Tahaou Senegal insists that the presidential election should proceed as scheduled on February 25. The mayor of Dakar, Barthélémy Dias, addressed the press, recently reaching out to other opposition parties. Tawfiq Abdel-Nasser has more.
Barthélémy Dias remains firm in his stance. There is no consideration of postponing the presidential election scheduled for February 25, 2024. The idea of delaying the election has found support among backers of the ruling party and some opposition candidates. They point to a toxic political climate, particularly with the imprisonment of opposition politician Ousmane Sonko. However, Tahaou Senegal, led by Barthélémy Dias, rejects these reasons. Tahaou Senegal is extending its outreach to the entire opposition. Notably, Khalifa Sall's platform has not joined the newly formed opposition coalition known as the Standing for Front for Inclusivity and Transparency in Elections. The political landscape in Senegal, experts say, remains dynamic as various factions navigate their positions ahead of the upcoming election in 2024.
Tawfiq Abdel-Nasser reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NEWSLINK continues.
Remember, we are live on WADR.org. Let's take you to the Sahel region where political and civil society actors in Mali are advocating for the preservation of national cohesion and prioritization of reconciliation efforts. Many of them emphasized the need for unity to enhance the collective capacity to effectively address the ongoing security challenges in the country. Ogebirika reports.
With the Malian army now in control of Kidal, questions are arising about its capacity to sustain a lasting presence in the town. Hamidou Doumbia, the spokesperson for the Alima party opposing the military transition, emphasizes the need for the Malian state to establish its legitimacy in this historically independent rebel stronghold. The capture of Kidal followed several days of intense fighting between the regular army and the pro-independence armed groups. Clement Dembele, the president of the Platform Against Corruption in Mali, asserts that Kidal has always been an integral part of Mali. Bamako claims to have inflicted heavy losses on the armed terrorist groups. Fighters from the Coordination of Patriotic Movement of the Democratic Forces of the Republic, CSP-PST, reportedly withdrew from the town, expressing regret for the death of 14 civilians, including children and notables. The situation remains dynamic, with ongoing concerns about stability and governance in Kidal following the military operation.
Oge Birika with that report. Meanwhile, the Burkinabe government has paid tribute to the Malian Armed Forces FAMA following the liberation of Kidal after several years under the control of rebels, now under the banner of the Permanent Strategic Framework for Peace, Security and Development, CSP-PSD. In a statement by the government spokesperson, Emmanuel Drago, Ouagadougou said with this important milestone victory towards the total liberation of the country, a new day is dawning for the populations of northern Mali and Mali as a whole. The Malian interim president, Assimi Goïta, had, in a communication read on state media Tuesday, announced the army's victory in the fight against rebels in the north. Although tension intensified in the region lately, the recent fight between the armed forces and the Tuareg fighters followed the occupation of bases left behind by the United Nations peacekeeping force known as MINUSMA. President Adama Barrow has praised the Saudi summit, stating the meeting has further strengthened ties between the continent and the Middle East. The Gambian leader also disclosed that Saudi Arabia and the Gambia signed bilateral agreements, particularly in the field of tourism. President Barrow revealed that the Organization of Islamic Cooperation OIC meeting, which is set to be hosted by the country, has been extended to May 2024. From Banjul, Sankule Janko reports.
President Adama Barrow of the Gambia participated in the Saudi Africa Summit in Riyadh, joining other African leaders to enhance cooperation between Africa and the Middle East country. After landing from the trip at the Banjul International Airport, President Barrow shared some of the outcomes of the trip.
Saudi are going through reforms. They want to partner with Africa. In this partnership, they want to import workers from Africa to work in Saudi, but this time it will be different. This time they want to bring in laws that will protect both Saudi and Africa. And I think this is very important because we are challenged with irregular migration, skilled workers, and even public servants. And this is to the tune of over 12 million workers.
President Barrow mentioned that the Gambia signed bilateral agreements with Saudi Arabia to strengthen the relationship between the two countries. Additionally, he mentioned that the Gambia was initially scheduled to host the 15th Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, this month, but the meeting has been extended to the next year.
We decided that I think it's better we push it further, and we decided to engage at the highest level, engage with head of states, engage with the secretariat, so that we can push it to the 5th of May, 2024. And I think unanimously, they all agreed, I think that time would be the best time to host the program.
Emphasizing the importance of hosting the Saudi Africa Summit in Riyadh, President Barrow expressed optimism that the summit would contribute to the development aspirations of Africa. He hopes it will build on the foundation already laid between Saudi Arabia and the continent, taking full advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area Initiative. For NEWSLINK West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Sankula Jenko reporting from Banjul.
You are listening to NEWSLINK here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Vote counting continues in Liberia after a presidential runoff election amid reported tension in some parts of the country. Debate escalates in Senegal over possible postponement of a February 2024 presidential election. The Burkinabe government celebrates Mali's defeat of rebel groups in Kidal after intense fighting. Still ahead in the news, Ghana Union of Traders calls for removal of COVID-19 levy and raw material taxes ahead of the 2024 budget presentation. We also have the press review, guest interview, and some sports update. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
We are live on WADR.org and on YouTube WADR News. Now, the Ghana Union of Traders is calling on the government to eliminate what they deem as nuisance taxes, including the COVID-19 levy and taxes on raw materials. This appeal comes as Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is set to present the 2024 budget statement and economic policy. The budget, which is expected to address the economy's performance, fiscal measures, and debt management strategies, also aims at enhancing stability and fostering growth. Joseph Pardy, the communications director for GUTA, argues that high taxes are diminishing the country's competitiveness among its neighboring countries.
So we want to hear something from the Finance Ministry, what they've put in place to make sure that interest rate comes down. For us, it's about 40%, and we will also expect that policy rate from Bank of Ghana also will come down, what they're able to put in place. And then we ask that government should make sure that the COVID-19 levy should be abolished from the books, for the port, and then also the 2% special levies should also be abolished. So these are some of the things we expect the Finance Ministry, because of all that we're saying, that cost of doing business in this country is extremely high, and because of that, our neighboring countries, we are not competitive with them, and it's a worry and it's a challenge. That is why in recent times, when you go to our ports, you see that goods and services are not coming into the country, and it's a worrying situation that we find ourselves as a trading community. So these are some of the things we want to hear from the Finance Ministry.
Meanwhile, Ghana's former finance minister said Dakar is cautioning the government against excessive borrowing.
And if we want to get a next tranche, if we want IMF resources, World Bank and African Development Bank are the ones that are holding the economy in terms of external finance and the rest, we have no option than to, remain faithful going to an election year. Another reason why we have to remain faithful to ourselves is that any reckless spending, for want of a better word, would make our situation worse. We are unable to have access to the market. So what? Do we want to take TB rates to 50%, 60% as the only source of financing? Ride out private sector, and mop up everything to finance the election. So we could be doing injurious things to ourselves.
Former Ghana's finance minister, Dakar.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Let's join WADR's Sankule Jankwin Banjul for headlines on the front pages of the Gambia National Dailies.
Hello out there and welcome to this edition of the Press Review. We begin today's Press Review with the Point newspaper, and the lead story reads, alleged PIU shooter confirms he killed police officers. Witness testifies. Foreign Ministry extends condolence to bereaved families of lost Gambian migrants. Let's move on to the Standard newspaper. State House says appointment of executive coordinators alleged. Recently, the president has created two offices in the Banjul City Council and the Kanifing Municipal Council called executive coordinators, a special office that will help implement government policies. However, there are a lot of debates as to whether the creation of these offices are actually legit. But the State House says, of course, they are legitimate. This audible read, Gambia Immigration Department, GID, may charge migrant traffickers with murder. Let's move on to the Fourier newspaper. Victims of mass demolition express concerns over economic hardship. Court reverses injunction orders against 7 banks, 9 companies. Q Group CEO holds talks with Islamic Development Bank chairman, and Gambia Transport Service Company introduce smart ticketing device with smart card. Now, let's move on to the final newspaper for today, and that is the Voice newspaper. PW1, that is prosecution witness 1 cross-examined in alleged Ministry of Health corruption scandal. And finally, this one reads, National Assembly, IEC, Ministry of Justice draw daggers over elections bill meeting date. Interesting times. Let's quickly take a look at the back page of the Voice newspaper, and it reads, Under 17 World Cup, Gay hat-trick fires Senegal closer to last 16th. And the back page of the Standard newspaper, it's a very sad one, and it reads, Cricket President Johnny Gomez passes away. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you in the studios.
Many thanks, Sankule Janko.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Today, Morgan Asogba, a regional expert, joins us with his perspectives on the many summits Africa has attended lately and how they go about directing the continent's developmental agenda. Our chat first recognized the just concluded Saudi Africa summit last week that brought together several heads of state and government from the continent. The kingdom, at the end of that meeting, signed agreements with countries, among them Niger, Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, worth hundreds of millions of US dollars. Take a listen.
This is a summit that falls within the new geopolitical development of the international scene. Most of the key players of the international scene are trying as much as possible to have a specific agreement with all the African countries all together. We've seen Turkey, Africa. We've seen Russia, Africa. We know about France, Africa. We know about US, Africa. And today, if we are China, Africa, and if we are having Saudi Africa, we should not be surprised at all.
How has Africa benefited from this in terms of financial independence and perhaps political free will?
Well, this is actually the biggest question, even if it seems very simple. The ability of Africa to take advantage fully, be it independently or, let's say, individually or as a one entity, depends on African countries doing their homeworks and also finding a common approach to international affairs. And this is one of the key elements lacking when you look at the African foreign policy. The African Union was supposed to play that key role, but it appears that the African Union is not well equipped to play that key role. Talking about the African countries, yes, for the countries that invite them, like Saudi did, they look at it as one entity and they play the trick of killing 54 birds with one stone, bringing all of them together, being aware of the fact that they don't have basically a common approach, and finding ways to take advantage of that one meeting to have deals, individual deals with all the countries. So Africa as an entity is not really taking advantage of this summit.
Will there come a time when Africa will find itself at a crossroad? Because the trend now is that any country with the means to gather all African heads of state will go ahead to do it and name it a summit. So next we might be expecting Qatar to do so because they have the money, or Belgium or any other country. Will Africa find itself someday at a crossroad?
Well, Mr. Hassan, I'm afraid that Africa is already a crossroad. But today more than ever, it's not just that Africa is a crossroad, but Africans have the opportunity and the capacity and the possibility to fully take advantage of the current dynamics. But the issue is that so far it is difficult to see African states move together in the direction of taking advantage of these opportunities. The homework is not being done, and it is, let's say, jeopardizing the capability of African states and Africans in taking advantage of these current dynamics, be it economically, geopolitically, or any other ways you might think of.
So, Mr. Morgan, would you say that moving forward and achieving this common collective goal for Africans is setting an agenda that is non-negotiable?
And it is funny that we have something. It is difficult. Everything is very difficult. It's like we are missing the point. And this is due to lack of willingness more than challenges that we are facing. No, I think with strong willingness and engagement, with the ability to definitely cut ties with many other situations, we can set our own agenda. We can do the homework, harmonize some key targets, just as you said, that are not negotiable, with allowing every single state to negotiate other aspects that might be beneficial to them. But all the African states should have a foreign policy. If they cannot call it a foreign policy, they should just call it a foreign agenda.
Morgan Asogba is a regional expert. And in the world of sports, Senegal moved a step closer to qualifying for the last 16 of the FIFA Under-17 World Cup after beating Poland 4-1 on Tuesday. Midfielder Idris Gueye scored a hat-trick in addition to Dominic Zala's own goal to send the African champions into raptures. The Lion Cats of Teranga maintained their 100% winning line in the tournament after a 2-1 victory in their opening game against Argentina last week. The West African nation needs a draw against Japan in their final group game. Elsewhere, the Confederation of African Football (CAF) has unveiled a list of 30 candidates for the African Woman of the Year award. Football's governing body has also published the preliminary nominations for the various women's categories at the CAF Awards 2023. And that's it on Sports Update. And with that, we wrap up this edition of NewsLink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Krista Mukidi and Mustafa Sek for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WEDR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is WADR's Gender Program 50/50 with Na DDTT, followed by the second edition of our comprehensive news package in French at 1 p.m. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about